Hi, my name is Benedict for Higher Hertz. In this video, we're looking at Halion number 6. It is a monster of a program, and as such, it initially appears to bring more downsides than good, but once you get over the hump, there is a lot in here that is pretty amazing. It's one of these do-everything kind of synths, so as such it puts itself up there with things like Omnisphere, Falcon, to a fair extent Contact, and I've got another dark horse which I'll put forward later where we do a little bit more comparison. But quite simply, we have an instrument that says it can kind of do everything. Synthesizer stuff, samples, wavetables, all kinds of things, and be super uber professional at the same time. Does it do that? Yeah, it does. Most people will have it probably more like they have Contact as just a preset player. I will say right up front, I did not download a single shred of content with this. The extra 30-something gigabytes just seemed a little excessive for the things that I wanted to look at and think matter far more than presets. Anyone can listen to presets. It provided a minor frustration when I started using the program, so it's a little thing that I probably should have thought about. What happens when somebody opens this program before all the sounds have come across? Because there's nothing. And seeing they've got oscillators on board, they could have provided, 4 sounds that at least had basic synth stuff so that we didn't open this and go, huh? Anyway, it's a very, very powerful instrument that works its way through all of these different screens, which in many ways is a bit of a problem. What does it sound like? Well, here's one I prepared earlier. It sounds awesome. This, as you can see, is 6 layers. So we've got a couple of layers of synths, a couple of layers of sample, including grain and wavetable. And I had to really learn how the program works and thinks. You do need some support when you start with this, but once you dig into what it does, if you're a true sound designer, as in not a patch fiddler, then there is plenty to recommend. Who does it come from? It comes from Steinberg. You should know who Steinberg are already. They are the whatever the word for cat is in German, for people behind Cubase. And they are one of the earlier people in this game. Cubase was well and truly established back in my Atari days I got mine in 91, and Cubase was already, along with Notator, which became Logic, was already super well established on the Atari. So they have been around that long. And in many ways it shows. It shows in 2 ways. One way is really good in the sense that they pretty well know what they're doing. And that's great. If you're looking for professional results, then somebody who knows what they're doing is far more likely to deliver that. The downside is that particularly when setting up, like getting things going here, installation and what have you, it felt like it was still the 90s. But nonetheless, Steinberg are a big name. They're the inventors of the VST format. The product itself, there are a couple of different versions. There are some cut downs like Sonic 3. Do not assume that Sonic 3 is the same as Halion or Halion. I'm not quite sure what it's supposed to be. I think it's HAL. because they've capitalized the HAL. So, like HAL 900, the murderous computer on 2001 is my guess on that. But if it wasn't capitalized, then Halion would seem to be correct because of Halo. But I think it's Halion. Don't care either way. It's just a pronunciation. But the full version is Halion 6. Sonic and the other versions are cut downs, which are essentially players. So, like Contact, you can just get a player. Falcon or UVI have their workstation, which is just a player. You can't program anything in it. Halion Sonic is, to my understanding, a lot like that. So you get the results of things that other people have made, and that may be enough for you. There are reasons to consider Halion as being a pretty darn good synth in its own right, even if somebody else has made the decisions for what knobs you're allowed to access. But the full version, it's not cheap, but it is designed as professional software. And 523, that sort of puts us up into that same market. So if we compare it to Falcon at 349 suddenly looks like a pretty good deal. Now, Falcon has certain advantages. There are more boxes ticked in what they have, in what it can do. But when you get deeper with it, which I have not been able to do because UVI refused to allow people to actually try it before buying it, which thankfully Steinberg do allow, but apparently when you get deeper into some of the nitty-gritty of some of the modules, you can't necessarily go as deep as you can with Halion. But Falcon is a fair competitor and a notable price difference, so we wonder why. Omnisphere is or was a really huge name. You used to hear Omnisphere every 2 sentences. That's at $499, so it's a little bit more close in terms of dollar competition. Again, Omnisphere I have never been able to try, simply because they also don't let you try it before buying it. But I think if you've decided Omnisphere is the way to go, it is a highly professional piece of software, so I don't see that there'd be anything wrong with it. It covers a lot of the same territory. Contact we already looked at, and Contact is far more sample-based than synth, but nonetheless, you can do just about anything you want to do with Contact if you know how to fly it. That one's up at $599, but oddly, every time I go to their site, they're claiming it's $299. Now, maybe they're concerned by Falcon seeming to take a price march. I'm also going to pop in something that people may think is unexpected here, but being a serious Reason man, I look at these one box that can do everything and think, I can do a lot of that in Reason, or I can do all of that in Reason. And Reason, especially now with the rack, so you can buy Reason and just run the rack in another DAW, really does all the same stuff. It's got the synthesizers, the samplers, loads of effects, ability to do this, that, and the other, wavetable-y stuff, grain table-y stuff, all kinds of things are all there. It's just a lot more visual. You will see that with Halion and Falcon is kind of the same. Everything's built on like node trees, which is very computer programmy, whereas Reason's just completely visual. You want to instance or load a delay unit. You can literally drag the picture of a delay unit and stick it where you want it to, and it'll put itself into the rack and wire itself up with the most realistic likely wiring. Again, you can see that on a review. And at $499, it puts itself right into the very same space. So before you go, but that's a really different kind of thing, or it's Artsman or whatever, if you're looking in this sort of space, I think it's a very, very fair contender up against Halion, Falcon, Omnisphere, Contact for what you can actually do. In all fairness, with Reason, maybe some of the filter forms aren't quite as grand as those in Halion. That's the thing that really blows me away. The sound of it is amazing, but nonetheless, it comes down to preference. Having been in Reason for close to 15 years, it's never stopped me from making a record that I think sounds pretty darn good, because when it comes to it, only people in forums talk about your filter sound. People who actually want to buy your record don't rightly care. They just go, do I like the songs? We've got our Good and bad we should run through. I've covered a certain amount of that already. The good is it's extremely powerful in its way. It has some limits. It's got a very nice synth and filter setup. It's a little cumbersome to use, but in terms of sound, remember, the filters and the layering, it's, as you can tell, I'm a little short for words there. It is incredibly impressive. You then got the ability to create what they call macros, which is the equivalent of Reason's Combinator, and you can skin them. So they can have pretty skins with knobs and stuff everywhere. I have not looked into it. I will not go over it here, but it does mean that you can then take something that you've built in Halion and actually export it for other people to load, or you can load it up yourself as though you were just loading, synthesizer X. We do need to be aware of the bads. The first one we'll move over fairly quickly, but it's VST3 only. Steinberg is heavily trying to force everyone only into VST3. Fair enough in a sense. Uptake on VST3 has been very slow because there's so much VST 2.4 out there. It's VST3 only, hence my having to be in Reaper. The fact that they're being a little pedantic about it it annoys me. But fair enough, whatever. They own the standard. They got the right to do what they want. The big thing, though, is that there is an enormous initial learning curve. The curve kind of levels out fairly quickly if you are already competent with synthesizers, especially if, like me, you are old enough to have used things that behave kind of like this back in the day, he says with his walking stick. Overall, there is a great tendency for old-fashioned and clunky, and as I said before, it's downloading and licensing set up with like program after program that opens and then says I haven't got this and I haven't got that and this has failed and that's failed, and try restarting. Maybe that'll allow us to do what we're supposed to do. When I installed and first ran the UVI, what was it? The delay, I can't remember the name, or Dual Delay X, that used the same licensing situation as this, and it just flew through. Steinberg, every time I try and use some of their stuff, it's just like, oh my God. They really need to get out of the 90s because it's a problem. And to be honest with their setup, between their setup, which ended up throwing icons all over my desktop, how dare you, and the obtuseness of the software from the beginning, I just about said, no, I'm not reviewing this, bugger this, I'll go do something else that actually cares about wanting me to use it. It was that infuriating. This is a thing you really have to overcome. So the initial setup, program layout with these node trees and what have you, it's like, come on. Are we still using Ataris? It's a massive problem. However, if you are aware that it's there and that it's going to be a hump that you need to get over, then just push through it. It's just the way it's going to be. Once you get to the other side of it and you can start to actually program the synth the way it's meant to be, I think you will be impressed. There is no FM. It's pretty amazing. A synth in this day and age has no FM at all. But I'm pretty stunned, really, even with things like Falcon. There's an FM module, but you can't FM a signal from one place to another. Very few of these instruments have actually worked out how to carry a signal from one place to another. They say, get us because we're fully integrated, and then they turn out to be a whole lot of modules that really don't integrate very well with each other at all. Reason is a lot more integrated than most, especially for its age when it started out, but there are still some issues there. But you can, if you know what you're doing, carry audio from one synth to another. So we can actually use the audio out of, say, Subtractor to be an FM for a sound inside Thor. There's nothing to stop us from doing that. We can use a sound from a sample, an NXT sample, to be a modulation FM source for something inside Thor. So there are ways to do it, at least. But FM and intermodulation is not a thing. Some people have said maybe it's going to happen in the next version. Wishes were fishes. And I also note that the one delay or echo effect that they give you is not got modulation on it. Boys and girls, really? Does Germany have a problem with modulating delays? I don't think Kraftwerk did. I don't think Tangerine Dream did. It's one of those things that just strikes me as inherently thoughtless. Now, it's possible to make the programs great enough that if we listen here, the delay, well, there's so much movement, the delay's kind of picking up on that movement anyway, but nonetheless, I sort of think, for the price, we could have had a little bit more thought go into some things when a lot of thought's gone into other things. Let's move forward and have a look. I am not going to do a blow-by-blow on this. That is impossible. So we will just look over the instrument and sort of work out what it roughly has got and what it roughly can do. We've got this sound. It's made up of a lot of different layers, which we will go through. All those sounds playing at once. Right, let's have a look. So everything has to be done through these little tabs, and there are then layers of tabs. To make a program is a little bit of a chore, and I'll just stop. I meant to mention this before. Something that really helped, and probably without it, I would have just gone, bugger this. This is not want to be used. Is a set of video tutorials. I don't know that they're actually official. They are on the YouTube of One Man and His Songs. There'll be a picture up there. And he has a very good series of tutorials that walks you through. Sometimes a little slowly, but it works on the assumption that you don't know much of anything. He doesn't try to be sexy or funky with it. Like me, he goes, this thing is all but impenetrable before you get there, but once you get there, it's powerful. Here is what you need to do. And he sort of walks you through step by step. And without him and his ability to actually show me things that need to be pressed, like these little icons that are so tiny and mean nothing, I wouldn't have got anywhere. And I noticed that, and maybe it'll do it, maybe it won't. See here, when in Reaper, where you've got the pin, the tooltips don't show up. So I didn't even realize there were tooltips to start with. Stuff like that is just kind of like, I don't know whether it's Reaper's fault or not. Reaper's pinning does seem to have some strange ideas, and as Reaper also does things like Control-Z, don't seem to be picked up by Halion, but Halion does have its own onboard, so whether it doesn't respond to Control-Z or not, I don't know. So they may be Reaper things, but I strongly recommend, if you are going to go with this, even just downloading the demo to try and get your head around it, One Man and His Songs YouTube videos, the series on how this program works. If, like me, you've got a lot of experience, you may not need to watch all of them or even necessarily all of any individual video, but just enough to work out how to do things, because I couldn't work out how to get any sound out of this thing at all. And again, I think that if people are downloading this and they haven't got the 30 gig of sounds yet, there really should be at least some basic synth programs, because you've got oscillators on board so that they can go, oh, it works. I know it works, therefore I've just got to work out how to make it work. Otherwise, you've got no proof that it even works. But you have to grab a program. The program has nothing in it. It won't do anything. And then there are the various icons along here. Create new layers and what have you. And then you've got to create a new zone and decide what kind of zone you want and insert it. fair enough. It just seems to me these days there are probably nicer ways of doing it. But again, I'm a Reason man, so I'm used to things being really quite visual and intuitive. Let's have a look at the first zone. All these zones are in order in which I made them. This guy is doing the nice filter movement. We have synth zones, sample zones, grain zones, organ zones, and wavetables. Organ zone I'll quickly show you, but I won't get into. That just has a set of drawbars. There is I can't remember the name of it. There is a B3 type thing that you can get, and that's built on that. It's good as it goes, just a basic set of drawbars to let you do the Hammond style additive. Seems like it's going to work a treat. Now, when you first start it, you get this, which is really exactly the same as what's in Kontakt, but not super attractive to work with. I then found, oh, hello, there's that. It's because I'm thinking, what's that little thing do? Click this, it now focuses on only the thing you're looking at, which is a great way of reducing head explosion. Again, it relies on these little icons, but at least you can work out what they are. So we've got our basic controls. There is unison. I don't know that unison's the unison that everybody loves, but I don't care. I don't love unison anyway. I think it often does more damage than good. So all your pitch controls, your oscillator control. I didn't get into how to make multiple layers in one zone or multiple zones in one layer or whatever it was. It was just too obtuse. I figured I'd go this way. It allowed for greater variety. So we've got 3 oscillators with pretty reasonable set of forms, including some cross modulation forms, which at a push you can get close-ish to FM, but you can't do DX style FM in here, just the way it goes. Some forms will allow you to move the wave form in some way. So the square or the pulse allows you to change its pulse modulation. This one, I can't remember what that one does. Nonetheless, nice oscillators, really good. They've got a lot of throw on the level, which means that obviously you can push them into your filters pretty hard. I didn't go down that path, but obviously you can. There is also a dedicated sub-oscillator. Then we've got the ring modulator, which is separate, so that's just ring modulating whatever choices you make. And a noise oscillator. I just added a little bit of those to give us a lot more to our sound. There's then your filter. Filter's initially a little confusing. You're like, what? But it's surprisingly well thought through. You've got just a simple filter. And you can choose from various forms. Classic, a tube drive, which is pretty gritty. And then bit reduced and clipped things. The old Halion 3, which is obviously just a Waldorf, which is a nice sounding filter. An Eco, which is just a filter, doesn't do a lot. The Classic is good, but then you can get into these other options of how you route things. So one into another, cascading, and that is essentially now making a kind of Minimoog ladder. You can have them parallel, so this filter and then this filter, and put the 2 signals together. The ability to morph from one to another, and morph all through all 4 of them, and then some sort of XY using this. It sounds nice. Now you'll see that everything here is set to 0, but down here we've got some macro controls. This isn't the full macro screen. There is a macro screen here which we haven't done anything with. but is the ability to assign things to controls. So I just extracted those. It's like, oh, okay, that's cool. That way I could access those controls whilst on another page, so to speak. Amplifiers, so are basic level type settings. Generally, there's some pretty good stuff in here. There's the ability to set the expression controller for dynamic level adjustment, which is needed for when you're doing strings and things like that, so that you will, your volume swell. Envelopes, not my favorite envelopes ever, because you're always having to drag things around a little bit to get them on screen. But once you get used to them, they are fast and they do work. So, I mean, fast in usage, fast in speed, yeah, they will do that too. So you've got an amp envelope, a filter envelope, and you can change their curvy-wurvy and all kinds of stuff. So they are nicely done. I didn't look as to whether you can actually add extra points. No, that's Reaper stuff, offering me to be able to automate things. So no, I don't think they're actually MSEGs. So lack of an MSEG might be a thing, but probably not that big of a deal. We've got, well, speaking of, there's a step modulator type thing, sort of precursor of MC. If you want it to be bigger, you can drag things out. We then got modulation, which is a pair of LFOs, only two. We don't seem to be able to add any more, which is sort of a shame, but they are pretty detailed. You've got a few forms, how they're set up, how they behave, fade-ins and what have you. And then it all comes together in the modulation matrix. Exactly how many modulation sources and what have you can have, I'm not sure. Probably plenty. So you set your where it comes from. The one I didn't understand was bus. But no doubt it has an explanation somewhere to where you want it to go to, and most things in here are allowable as a destination, so good on you. That's one of the advantages of having a fixed architecture, that it's much easier to set up assignments. So all of that is pretty good. Then if you want to have your LFO here set to something like mod wheel or modified by something else, then you simply add it underneath. All works really, really nicely. If we want to hear that without effects, there we go. That then goes to a mixer. There are various ways of viewing the mixer, so we can view each individual sound here and add effects to them. I try not to do that kind of stuff at this level, but nonetheless it is there. Or we can go to just the master out and add our effects there. So we'll work through no effect, chorus. It's a little annoying. You have to click the editor to focus the editor. So you can have clicked on something and think you've got it focused and then start wiggling the wrong knobs. Again, it's just a little unmodern in its thinking. Unevolved is probably the fair thing there. But chorus sounds quite good. I quite like chorus. It's one of those very subtle kinds of choruses. Juno-ish in style. It doesn't go very swishy, it just adds this big, bright, glossy sort of sound. Cool. Tube saturator. I wasn't looking to have it work hard at all, just a sort of invisible kind of extra something. And because it's working on the chorus signal, then that should be a little bit more interesting. This delay was the disappointment, as I say, because no modulation. But ultimately it does the job until you pull out and go with a dedicated unit. And then reverb, which for an onboard is pretty good. So collectively, everything in. We do get that great big glossy workstation kind of sheen, and that is nice. So, all cool. One sound. The next sound is similar. Now we've got to find our thing. So that's built again on synth. This one is moving this waveform knob just via the mod wheel. Wanted to see how it would go, what it would happen, how it sounded. Sounds good. This is the first sample. This is just a sample. I did learn that you can, from the program, from the load screen, grab a sample and just drag it over to a program. I don't know that you can just drag it and drop it here. I didn't try that, but you can drag it to a program and it automatically just assigns it as a sample playing zone. You can then change it across to grain or wavetable or whatever. But straight sample. I seem to recall there was a way, or you can load and replace from here. I seem to recall there was a way to play the sample. Maybe that was a different mode. But if there are loops already built, like the loop was built in Reason already, it's carried that forward. So it picks up any looping information. So same thing. There's time scaling, which I didn't look at. I assume it will be good. All the other algorithm stuff is pretty darn good. A lot of things only happen once you re-trigger keys. Again, a little outdated, but I can understand it for the amount of processing that's probably going on. Common enough on digital synths or older digital synths. Just really nice sounds. So very, very versatile, very capable. This is the first of the grains. So you see things look a little different. We can see the sample here. Now I loaded a whole piece of music of my own off the last record. That was what was loaded. Yes, the grid. So I loaded the whole thing. Excessive, yes. It took me some time, and again I had to watch One Man and His Songs to work out how to actually make it do something useful. Their approach to the grain thing is different. I'm not going to say wrong. It's possibly more detailed, but it's different. So you've really kind of got to get your head around how it works. I did have a crash, but I think maybe I was just taxing it too much through not understanding how it worked. I'm never a massive fan of grain, but within the context of this sound, the sort of poppy, scratchy kind of thing going on adds a layer of nice. So there is a detailed grain engine in here that you can do a lot of stuff with, again with all of your filters and what have you. Wavetable. Wavetable again, I had to phone a friend, Mr. One Man and His Songs, to work out how to get started. And it is good. It is really good. There are a couple of ways to view it. What you saw before with the wavy bed sheet is the pretty way of looking at it. This is the other way, so you can see in terms of waveforms what you've got. But you have to actually go to the Wavetable tab to actually do the work, which is fine when you know it, but until you know it, you're nowhere. So we can view in various different ways. Oh, that's the lower one, 2D wave. There is no sample here. You can add predefined forms and it will automatically set up the crossovers, which is what we've got here. So if we turn off effects, sine, saw, noise, saw, pink noise, sine, and it just goes round and round. And I think I've set it so that there are several read heads, which you can see with the lines moving across the topology. Pretty cool. Then you can actually work on the spectrum itself. So you have got a, thank you, you've got a fully functional additive synth. How many things there are here? It's got to be 212. That's an odd number. 212, whatever. It's lots of partials, far more than you need. So you can actually draw your own. So you can create an empty slot and then draw your own additive waveform. And it can be seen as a 2D waveform here. Just as we see this walking its way through, we can actually see what wave shape we've created. That is really good and actually really quite nicely done. I didn't spend much time in here. It'd be nice maybe if it could be bigger. Oh, there you go. 1 times 848. So, okay, fair enough. It was just that this was narrowing in a little bit. So you can narrow in to make it easier to work on your partials. Fair enough. I've seen that in plenty of devices. So you can get completely partial by partial control. The only thing you can't control there with those partials is you can't have an envelope per partial. That's what's needed for real additive synthesis, but similar to Zebra, but I think a little more elegantly done. There's something about Zebra that I find a little to use. This just made more sense once I got my head around what it was doing. So you can create your own wavetables completely by hand, which is really, really good. And as we see, we've got several playheads moving over time, so we end up with a very complex wave. We go back to the zone. Now, where is it? Yeah, multi-oscillator, turn that off. So that is the essence, the true essence of wavetable. Brilliant. And then there's the ability to do the whole same thing again with a sample. So we have our sample, one I prepared earlier. This was the one that had the ability to let you just play the sample. That's the original sample. I gave it 6 slices. By rights, I should have given it a lot more slices, but you can just choose the number of slices that you want, and it'll work out. In theory, the more slices we have, yes, the more detailed the sound becomes. And you can view them as a spectrum. So if we wanted to, we could go in here and say, no, I don't like where that partial's at. Let's change that. That gives you complete control. And then this is just showing you how and letting you control the crossover between each of these time slices. So if I say, oh, 7 to 8, I don't really dig, then I can go in there and find it and rearrange it in a great amount of detail. Really very good. Detailed and fussy and pedantic, but if you're at that level of wanting to control sounds, this is what you need to do. So in that sense, the wavetable actually ended up being the thing that got me the most excited in the end. That combo between wavetable and the filters. And I didn't do much in the way of filtering on this one. We have to bounce around. But you see, actually, no, I did none in the end. Does allow for some really, really nice sound design. just a super classy. Yes, it's kind of digital sound, but it's digital sound done well. This is what an early PPG would have hoped to be. So despite its frustrations, that initially it's impenetrable. Once you start to get your head around even just the basics, then it opens up and you've got access to a truly beautiful sounding instrument that you can do an awful lot with, as long as you aren't hoping for FM. But there's normally ways and means anyway. Is it the thing you should buy? Well, you want to be pretty serious about being... Oh, this will be the final words, by the way. Is it the thing that you should buy? Well, it depends how serious you are about sound design. If you're very serious about sound design, then you're probably already looking at the contenders like Falcon, Omnisphere, Kontakt, what have you, and what they'll do, how you feel like you connect to them as an artist. In which case, if you haven't looked at Halion and it's not talked about as much, then it is worth a look. Just get over that initial kind of like, huh? And find out what it is good at, because it definitely has its advantages. And if you dig what it does, then it might just be a wonderful tool for you, because the quality for what it does is tremendous. You know, the sound quality is lovely, and the fact that not everybody's using it means that there's a certain something in your sounds and your records that are a little different from what everybody else is doing, thoughtlessly, lazily, what have you. If you're going, oh, gee, I really like the sound of it, but I'm not a programmer, I don't want to be a programmer, well, one of two choices. Buy the full Halion and align yourself with a synth programmer. That's what Mr. Trent Reznor did, and among many other people. Jarre had his man. It's very, very common. Quite a few bands used Larry Fast, including Peter Gabriel used Larry Fast as sound designer. So you either buy the whole thing and then have a pet sound designer who programs these amazing things for you, and you go, oh, I really like that one, or yeah, I quite like that one, but can we make it a little bit more? That's one way. Or just go for one of the cut downs like Sonic or whatever, and then rely on buying in sound programs from other people. Whichever way works for you. Halion is some lovely code, which is initially at least hampered by some legacy programming. Hopefully, as time goes by, they will find ways to sort of improve that. They obviously don't want to upset their existing users, because any existing serious users are probably going to be quite upset if it suddenly, next version, Halion 7 suddenly comes out looking like something completely different. Looks like an iPad device or something or other. So I can understand, but just take your time to get over that initial hump. And again, One Man and His Songs is probably a good place to help you go, oh, that's what I need to do to get going. And then you are really going to want to spend some time doing a bit of the old RTFM on each of the modules bit by bit as you go through, to find the things that are just hidden away under obscure little buttons. Yes, they do have tooltips when it turns out that they're allowed to be displayed, which helps some, but speed comes from knowing, and it's just going to take you a little longer to know this than the average simple synthesizer. But it'll do so much more. I hope you have found this program interesting and useful. I think that Halion offers a tremendous amount. So ultimately, I'm glad I looked at it, and I'm glad that I went through that initial speed bump of what the hell is this and what are they doing to me, spewing icons all over my desktop and giving me a synth that has no sound whatsoever and no way to make it make sound. All that kind of stuff. It's worth it. If nothing else, if this isn't the path for you, at least now you can say, hey, look, that's not the path for me. If you've learnt some interesting things, brilliant. The whole program is about helping you to be a better musician, to understand the tools better, not in like the red knob does this, because that's how to not understand your tools, but in the thinking underneath it. Maybe you've seen me do some stuff and sort of go, ooh. Because must admit, I came out of this and then went back to grain and reason and said, how would I do that? So that's a good thing, a good walk away. If you have any broad questions, not about iLok, please, hit subscribe and fire them on through below. If you've got some positives, just want to say that you're enjoying the program, again, please hit the subscribe and fire it on through below. People seem to have lost that ability to communicate and engage and build relationships, which is super sad. Remember, one of the keys for success in any arena is backline, as in relating to people. If you want fans, that is all about relating to people. When Freddie Mercury was on stage, he was relating to, it might have been 40,000 people in the room, but he was able to relate to those people. Those people felt like he was singing to them. So learn to relate to people, and having conversations online is a big part of that. You never know who you might actually meet who goes, hey, let's do this thing. And there's no other way of getting there than having those conversations. So start the conversations below, encourage, be positive, engage, because that's how you start to build your backline. That's how you start to build your success. So another free sort of bonus thing there. Name is Benedict for Higher Hertz. Oh, look, I managed to point in the right direction. Pop over to higherhertz.com, and there's a different stream of information there, different stuff. Oh, and of course, Hertz Delay is over there as well if you're looking for a interesting sound goodnifier delay, echo, reverb, chorus unit for yourselves. But most importantly, have a great day.